Hi, my name is Jacqui Wishart. I'm talking to you today as part of Junior Achievement's Career Speaker Series, and I'm really excited to share with you how I took a non-traditional path to work at a tech company. I work at a company called Blackbaud. We're located in Charleston, South Carolina, although we have offices all over the world, including in Austin, Texas, Bedford, New Hampshire, England, Australia, and many other smaller satellite companies. I manage a group of people there, and I'd like to kind of talk to you about the path I've taken throughout my career in a software company, despite not having a traditional STEM background. I started college at the University of Connecticut, and when I entered college, I really thought I wanted to be in the hard sciences. I was especially interested in DNA and genetics, and I thought majoring in molecular and cell biology would give me a really great career that was really challenging. I took about 2 semesters of hard science classes and math classes and decided that I really didn't like it. I really didn't like being solitary or in a lab or looking into a microscope. I really wanted to work with people, and I didn't think I would have that opportunity if I continued down that hard science path. I ended up taking a gen ed class on comparative politics, which I found really interesting because it talked about the ways that different governments were formed and how the power struggle between different groups of people ultimately led to the method of government they ended up with. I felt like that was something that was really interesting, and I decided to major in that, but I made a promise to myself that I was going to take a very diverse course. I made a promise to myself that I was going to take a very diverse set of courses in order to complete my degree. My junior year of college, I transferred to the University of New Hampshire, back in my home state of New Hampshire, and I took a class in computer coding. I took a class in a very easy coding language called Visual Basic, but it was my first introduction to anything coding related. When I was in high school or elementary school or middle school, there was no concept of coding. We played Oregon Trail to learn typing, and that was pretty much it. I was the only girl in that class, and I was really intimidated. First of all, because I was the only girl. Second of all, because I was not familiar with the concepts of coding or the logic behind why code worked. And I ended up getting the highest grade out of anybody in that class, and it really opened up an interest within me about how computers were coded and how software worked. So ultimately, it was too late in my college career to change majors. I didn't want to pay for 2 more years of college above and beyond what I already would have owed entering my junior year. So I decided to stick with computer science. I decided to stick with political science, but I made sure to take a very diverse set of courses, including business and philosophy and introduction to engineering and a couple more classes about computers, including a philosophy of computing class, which I was able to TA my senior year. I graduated at the height of the last recession in 2009, so jobs were not easily and available, or people were not knocking down my door to hire me. So I ended up working with a staffing agency to get placed at a company called Whipple Hill Communications, and they were located in southern New Hampshire. Whipple Hill was a very small company. We only had about 50 people at the time that I joined, and we specialized in creating software for private and independent schools throughout North America. There were several different components to that software, but it included a student information system where grades and learning IEPs and schedules were housed, a learning management system that housed classroom materials and athletics and dorm groups and all sorts of things, an admissions module which allowed families to apply for admission to those schools, and then a front-end website content management system that allowed for the marketing department to attract families to apply to that organization. So there were lots of different areas of the software and lots of different people within a school that would interact with that software. I started in the support department because I was new, I didn't have any experience, and that was a really great entry-level role for me. I was able to learn the software, I was able to learn more about the industry, and really understand how big that software was and how many different settings there were. In support, you would take phone calls or emails, and you would figure out why the software wasn't doing what the client wanted. So if there was a setting, that was something that I could easily fix. If it was something that required a programmer, I would have to communicate with programming as to what the issue was, how it was supposed to work based on what we knew, and then how, back to the client, how we plan to address it. There were also instances where the software didn't do what the client wanted, but that software wasn't designed to do what the client wanted. So those were called enhancements. And the same thing, you had to gather the requirements from the client, have that communicated to programming, and then communicate back to the client if and when we thought that we would be able to work that in. The software was customizable to some degree, but the framework of the software was the same across all schools. So you could change the settings, but you couldn't change the actual software driving those settings. I spent about 6 months in customer support, and I learned a ton about the software and how to deal with clients and how to de-escalate clients. And I learned a lot of the soft skills that made me really effective at my next role, which was in consulting. And in consulting, I worked with clients that purchased the software to migrate from their old system to the system that Whipple Hill offered. And that was really challenging because it was a very small window of time that you had to get people up and running for the start of the school year. So summers were always crazy back when I was in consulting. And it was also really challenging because there's so many different types of schools out there that we worked with, so many different levels of familiarity with computers or technology or information management systems. And I also spent a lot of time traveling to those clients. So I got to see a lot of the country. I got to work very closely with many different organizations throughout the country. And I also, spent a lot of time on my downtime thinking about ways to do things better. And I was constantly in a position of wanting to innovate and make implementations better, make the resources that clients had better. And one of the major projects I worked on in my early years was documenting the software. At a startup company, you don't really have people that are specifically trained to do technical writing or specifically trained to do training development. It's kind of all hands on deck. So as a consultant, I spent a lot of time with the software. I also spent a lot of time with clients who were learning the software. And I could see that there were certain roadblocks. And one of those was that they didn't have a written manual on how to use the software. So in my downtime, I spent many, many hours creating a very comprehensive knowledge base so that clients could refer back to that after our time in consulting was done, so they didn't have to keep bugging my friends in support. That role also morphed into onboarding new consultants and training them on how to be great consultants, training them on how to deliver software training and how to deliver consulting and make sure that the software was set up in a way that was going to make sense for the school in the long run. About 6 years ago, that small startup was acquired by a much larger company called Blackbaud. And we were acquired because we had a really great set of tools for schools. Blackbaud's core bread and butter clients are traditionally bigger nonprofits, but we did a really great service for those small independent and private schools throughout the country. Blackbaud's first client was actually a school in New York City many years ago, over 30 years ago, and we created a very specific software for them. So Blackbaud's original client base was schools, and they were able to acquire a lot more clients through acquiring Whipple Hill. So at Blackbaud, it was a bit of a culture shock for a while because you went from being a subject matter expert on your particular area of the software to having a whole wealth of resources, people who were technical writers, people who did training development and did consulting development. And those, that was just a big adjustment for me, because I was used to doing everything and used to having all hands on deck for big projects. The role evolved for me again, and I spent time, consulting. I was a senior principal consultant, which meant that I was a subject matter expert in education management, and I was a resource that helped, products and sales and other organizations within Blackbaud make the best of that software, while also continuing to work with clients. And usually I work with our larger clients, including, really big schools or really strategic schools, or really, schools that we wanted to have a lot of feedback from. I then moved into a role where I thought I would be doing data conversions, and I just couldn't get it. I couldn't get the way that data conversions were done. It was a very antiquated system that was created many, many years ago under Whipple Hill, and it was very difficult for me to wrap my head around the SQL code and the script and all of the checking that had to happen in order to convert one database to another. So my company gave me a team after my failed experiment of being a data analyst, and that team was able to recreate that process and basically make it a lot better. So I took on basically an unofficial product owner role, and a product owner's role is really to be the intermediary between programming services, so those people that are on the phone with clients to help them migrate away from a different software, and then clients to figure out what clients wanted and what clients needed. So we were able to develop a series of data conversion tools that allowed people to convert data way more easily, and then also allowed them to much more easily manage that data going forward. So it prevented a lot of manual work on our side. That was a really exciting role because it allowed me to do something completely different. I had never been in a product ownership capacity before, and even though I wasn't, official product owner, it gave me a lot of experience in thinking through, the marketing behind a big change like that, or how to deal with people who were interfacing with the end users, like support analysts or consultants, and how they would communicate that change. And also dealing with the backlash from clients who maybe didn't understand why things were changing, and maybe had to be sold a little bit on the benefit of those changes. From there, I started managing a different group of people that performs managed services within Blackbaud. And those managed services are basically an extension of the organization that hires us. So if a client needs data work done, or if they need gifts processed, or if they need a ton of different types of services, we're the ones that do that. So I spend a lot of my time with that team figuring out ways to do things better, more efficiently, hearing client concerns, working with sales to figure out appropriate messaging, working with marketing to figure out how to market those services and make them valuable within the marketplace. And then I also work with a team of retainer consultants who are basically the experts of a particular client at our organization. So if a client purchases retained services, they have one contact at our company that really understands soup to nuts what is going on at that organization, what software of Blackbaud's they're using, and then how to more effectively and efficiently use the software tools to help them with their day-to-day jobs. So that's also a really exciting role. I've been able to build that business up from the ground. So 2 years ago, we didn't have retainer services. Now we have retainer services, and we've sold millions of dollars worth of services. So being able to look at the way that things are delivered, being able to train and hire and figure out where what skill sets are really needed to do that role effectively and efficiently is a really rewarding part of my job. And then also continuing to develop my staff to give them the confidence and the skill set to be really effective at their job is something else that I do quite a bit of, and is very rewarding. So all of that is to kind of say it doesn't. You don't need a computer science degree to work at a tech company. I work with plenty of people on a daily basis that have no background in tech and don't even consider themselves very tech savvy, but they have the business acumen behind creating a really successful organization. The path to get there is, always going to be meandering, but I feel like if you have listening skills and you have those soft skills that are needed, in addition to some hard skills like understanding budgets, understanding math, understanding forecasting and capacity modeling, and all sorts of other fun business terms, if you have those things coupled with people skills and wanting to do better and wanting to make things better for everybody, you'll be able to get ahead if you can get in the door with a tech company. I would say that for anybody figuring out what they want to major in, make sure that you have a backup plan and a plan B. When I graduated with my degree in political science, I never thought I would be working in a tech company. I kind of fell into it due to that staffing agency and the fact that the economy wasn't very strong. I really thought that I would be somewhere in public policy or maybe go to law school or do something other than working in tech. But this has been a really rewarding career for me. I'm really happy that I'm able to help so many organizations do their missions better. And I also think that it's really been a great experience to work at a smaller startup company, then get acquired by a much larger company, because I've worked essentially with the same organization for 10 years, but I've had many different careers and many different opportunities within those organizations that I wouldn't have had had I been hopping from company to company. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'm happy to answer them. I hope you enjoyed my story, and thanks for listening. Bye.